Hey guys, we kind of promised this a new series. So we want to break down a bunch of the college football teams, just kind of a preview for this year. And we're going to start with my favorite team, Ohio State. So as you guys know, Ohio State lost last year to Georgia in the playoffs, one of probably the games of the year. They're bringing back a bunch of players, a top five team. But the big piece here is going to be the loss of C.J. Stroud and how they replace him. So right now they have a quarterback competition. Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, both five-star quarterbacks, 4 or 5-star, depending on what recruiting service you look at. But beyond that, and some losses on the offensive line, they bring back a big majority of their offense. What up, Steven? What was your thoughts on Ohio State this upcoming year?
I think they're obviously one of the favorites. We're going to get into their schedule after, but they don't have like the toughest schedule, just like a couple of the other top teams. But I think they're pretty much either them or Michigan, obviously, are a lock. We'll talk about Michigan later, but one of them are going to be a lock for the playoffs, like the last couple of seasons. I just think that's how Ohio State kind of works in today's football, especially with the playoffs and when it expands. I feel like certain teams are going to be like solidified locks every year. Doesn't really matter what happens, like the Alabamas of the world, stuff like that, the Georgias. Going into like making this video, obviously this is a new series we're doing, but I didn't really know too much about Ohio State. Obviously they have a lot of returning receivers. I know the secondary, they brought back a couple of people, but I didn't know about the quarterbacks. So I mean, just looking at it now, this Devin Brown dude, what number does he wear? Do you know?
33.
Yeah,
33. He wears number 33.
So he really wears 33.
Yes. So he did not wear 33 last year.
Take him serious. You can't. I'm not taking no damn quarterback for 33.
But yeah, he decided this year. This was a big story. There's actually a reason. Some old, and I cannot remember some old Ohio quarterback for 30s wearing in honor of them.
Okay, I mean that's pretty cool, I guess. I thought it was a typo.
But yeah, like I said, the story is going to be the quarterback competition. But you know, I think when you talk about Ohio State, one, you got to talk about offense, and they're bringing back that receiving core is going to be nasty again. When you talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., probably the best returning wide receiver in college football, 1,200 plus yards, 14 touchdowns. I mean, again, it's debatable, right?
It's not debatable.
Emeka Egbuka, over 1,000 yards, 74 catches. Julian Fleming's coming back next year. Xavier Johnson. So they are obviously losing Jackson Smith and Jigba, but they played most of the year without him. Cade Stover at tight end is also coming back. So most of their catches, most of their receiving core, both of their top 3 running backs, and Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, and Dallin Hendon, all back. So like I said, really, and again, we could talk about the offensive line, but really outside of C.J. Stroud, all of their skill position players are back.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I could play quarterback for this team, and like I'd have every weapon. Like I feel like whoever plays quarterback for this team, it's going to be like the Stetson Bennett situation. Like there's no weakness to that offense.
Yeah. Well, outside of maybe the quarterback.
I don't know how the offensive line is. I know you guys lost Paris Johnson, but
so lost to Dawad Jones, Paris Johnson, and then a center, Luke. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. So yeah, we're replacing 3 offensive linemen.
Yeah, so I mean, I think when it comes down to it, though, like it's just going to be plug and play. He may not be as good as C.J. Stroud was, but I don't think he'll really need to. If he's just a game manager, I think the pieces around him could lift them to a playoffs. Now, I don't know if they'll win it. Depending on how good the quarterback is, he can't be terrible, obviously. But even if he's an above average quarterback, I mean, I think that Ohio State probably has a top 3 chance out of all the teams in the nation to win it. And in my eyes, are like a 99% lock to get in, unless they lose to Michigan like horribly or something crazy happens.
Yeah, and as we talk about their schedule, I mean, that's the thing. I think for Ohio State fans and for the potential of Ohio State to do well, I think there's 2 games that are big, that loom large. I think that Notre Dame game early, obviously the 4th game of the season. I think we have a bunch of games that should be easily winnable. hopefully give whoever the quarterback is a little bit of confidence. But that Notre Dame game, Marcus Freeman, an Ohio State alum, who's was a heck of a defensive coordinator and a couple of stops to include Notre Dame as the defensive coordinator, is probably going to give a new young quarterback some difficult looks. And then obviously, again, it all boils down to that Michigan game. Unfortunately, the game is in Michigan, in the Big House this year. And Michigan, as we talk about them, is returning a lot of their skill position players as well. So it should be a heck of a game. I think that goes to us getting better in the trenches. Again, we talked about the 3 offensive linemen and 3 new offensive linemen. The fortunate thing is when you're a team like Ohio State, a blue blood, you're replacing 5 stars with 5 stars. Now, obviously, they may not have as much experience actually playing, but by the time we get to that Michigan game, they should be geared up and ready to go. So it should be a heck of a battle.
Yeah, I mean, as you look at the schedule, I mean, the out of conference other than Notre Dame is obviously terrible. So yes. I think the only 2 games, maybe 3, you can call Penn State the 3rd game, but the only 2 games you have to worry about is Notre Dame and Michigan. And I'm really high on Notre Dame this year with Sam Hartman going over there. I know we did the preseason top 25 a few weeks back, and I was really high on them. I think they're going to be a good team. They just have a really hard schedule, so I don't know if I can see them going undefeated in order to get in. But I think they can play spoiler for a lot of the teams, being Ohio State, USC, and Clemson, playing all 3 of them. So I think Notre Dame could be the spoiler. I mean, they could also get in if they're 11-1 and they have 2 really good wins and 1 not so bad loss. So I mean, I think those are the only 2 games that I would really worry about if I'm an Ohio State fan, is Michigan and Notre Dame, just because the rest I feel like they're all going to be like you're going to stomp a mud hole in half these teams.
We would hope.
Yeah, I mean, but I think when it comes to the Big Ten, like I said, Michigan and Ohio State are the 2 front runners. I kind of wish they weren't on the same side of the conference, though. I feel like they should do like some sort of realignment, kind of like the SEC. Like it's just Georgia on one side, and
that has kind of been talked about with the Big Ten, especially next year as USC, UCLA come over, kind of doing, I think, what the SEC is doing, which is the 2 best teams playing the conference.
It's like the Big 12.
Oh, Big 12.
And the Pac-12 does it too. Oh, so, the Pac-12 may not do it. I know the Big 12 does it for sure.
But yeah, the 2 best teams playing the conference championship. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see. Obviously, there's going to be conference realignment. The tough part is if you did that, what may happen is you have Ohio State, Michigan, the last Saturday of the season, and then Ohio State, Michigan in the conference championship, a couple weeks later. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with 2 good games, but right now it just couldn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you want to see the 2 best teams, though. It shouldn't be about like, well, we don't want to give one like this game on December 3rd or this game on November 24th, and then now they're going to turn around and play on December 3rd. And if that's 2 best teams, that's 2 best teams.
And it's tough because when you look at the West versus the East, especially with Wisconsin down a couple years, your 3 best teams are all in the East with Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. So if you remember, as this kind of played out this year, it was the race in the East, and then it was almost a who's going to win the West, and it was changing every week. Yeah. Purdue was in it, Illinois was in it, Wisconsin was in it, and all of those teams had 3 losses plus. You got 2 teams on the East, or really 3 teams that were better than every team on the West.
Do you know what the so I know like ESPN or like on Instagram, I'm an ACC fan, so it popped up on my feed. But did they show you, or did you see on your social media what the Ohio State over or under wins are compared to all the other Big Ten teams?
I think it was 10.5.
Was it? Who posted it?
I think the bet was 10.5. I don't know about. I think the betting line is 10.5.
Let me see if I can find it.
But in the meantime, so the big question for Ohio State is defense. I think we had a good stretch. A little exposed in that Michigan game, right? Especially when we talk about in the trenches. I think the big piece here is everybody taking a step up. We bring back a lot of players. Eichenberg, Steel Chambers, JT Tumalomalau, and I'm sure I'm messing that name up. So all of those players need to take a step up. Jack Sawyer, Is it 10.5? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
Michigan and Ohio State 10.5, and Penn State's 9.5.
So I think we have to play, especially against Michigan and really Notre Dame, who plays kind of a pro style game of football. We have to be better in the trenches. I think the offense, like Steven said, no matter who you put in at quarterback, we're going to be fine. But we haven't had a big breakout, a big scary defensive end really since Chase Young left. So hopefully that's JT this year.
I feel like that's
JT,
not his game though. Like I feel like that's not his game. But he's still
yeah,
like I feel like he's still one of the best ends in the country, but he's not like a Chase Young. Like I feel like he's not as big, I don't think. And I feel like he's more athletic. Like he can do more.
yeah,
Like he's like a linebacker kind of.
yeah, almost. And yeah, we haven't had that. We haven't had that guy that you had to game plan for, that you maybe had to move blockers for. I think this year we need somebody to have a breakout year. If you look at Ohio State in terms of sacks, it really was nobody really had over 5. You had a bunch of guys kind of between that 3 and 5, but nobody and again they played solid most of the year. Hopefully Jim Knowles in his second year as defensive coordinator, we pick it up a little bit more, and they look good, and we get a lot of pressure on the quarterback.
So to round out my prediction slash preview, I guess I would say for Ohio State, I'm going to say that they will. I think they'll win the Big Ten. I think it's going to be tough with Michigan, but I think they get it done this year. And I also think Michigan may lose another game. And so even if they don't beat them, they'll be tied. I mean, they'll have the head-to-head, obviously. But I think they're going to find a way to win the Big Ten and get in the playoffs. I don't know if they'll make – I mean, a lot can happen until the postseason. So I'll just say I think they'll win the Big Ten. I think they'll get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would say the same. Again, this comes down to Michigan, Ohio State. However, I think if similar to this year, I'm going to say Ohio State makes the playoffs. I would not be shocked if both teams get in. I think there's a lot of parity in the SEC this year as we kind of talk about SEC teams. And I think just kind of coming back, Ohio State and Michigan are going to be 2 of the best teams in college football. So if I've just kind of given a prediction, and again, we'll talk about this more when we talk about Michigan, but I think even dependent upon the results of that game, I think both teams are going to find a way to get in.